Everybody. Now you're not in Austin anymore, right, Jonathan?
No.
I
Hey,
can't
how's it
hear.
going?
So where are you at now, Jonathan?
I'm in Wichita, Kansas for about another week,
Oh, it is.
and then I'm going to Guam.
Is that a holiday or is that the permanent gig?
No, that's the permanent gig. So,
Wow.
Chris,
That's not a bad permanent gig.
yeah, we're about to find out. Chris he was in the Air Force Reserves.
Right.
Probably last time I saw you. He went active duty a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
And yeah, so we got sent to Kansas at first, and now we're going to Guam.
I
for
see. So
3
you've been
years.
in Kansas for a while.
Yeah, for a little while.
Oh, man. Nice. Well, Guam's nice. They have what are they called? The gigantic stones that were originally currency, but now they're
Really?
so big you can't move them. Yeah, so people would just own these stones, and they're more like an asset now. So it reminds me. I always use that as an example to talk about crypto. Like crypto is supposed to be a currency, and the stones got so big they became an asset, and now instead of trading these stones,
just
you just
take
have
loans
like
against them.
entitlement to the stone, and people will like trade them around, but they stay right where they are. They're like these gigantic round rocks. Yeah, it's like huge. So it's pretty funny. So Guam's nice though. I can't little Hawaii paradise. So
Yeah, that's what I hear.
it's not a bad place to be stuck. So
Yeah, about to find out.
yeah. So how long's his term there?
3 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. After COVID, like the remote work became a thing. And I was like, you know what?
Yeah,
I'll
I can go
whatever.
anywhere, do anything.
Yeah.
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 Nope. I know. We never did open up our office again. We just stayed remote forever. So
Yeah.
Can you hear me
Crocky,
now?
y'all good?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
we're all good.
Now no echo. So
I
yep,
can hear
it's
you
all
now,
perfect.
yeah.
You hear us? Okay, good. Oh wait, I did want to know. So I saw like Frankie on a surfboard.
Oh
You
no,
get
no, that's
Frankie-
AI, bro.
Oh, is it?
And
Oh,
it's what I want to talk about today too, because I reckon most of this power drainage is just people making stupid photos.
Well, I did. Mark Zuckerberg did mention, or no, Sam Altman mentioned, how much compute power is used when people are trying to be nice to AI and use the word please, and thank you. It's like they're using so much power. So nice. All right. Well, welcome to the conversation where we unpack the wild, interconnected chaos shaping our world, including the population's decline and all the reasons for it. Our guest, Jonathan Blackburn, is a principal at Black Moose Financial Group, providing fractional CFO and financial advisory services in renewable energy and startups, a clean energy finance expert. He structured over $400 million in Texas-based transactions, managed 3 gigawatts of solar storage acquisitions at RWE, and founded an energy storage startup. With a master's in philosophy from Cambridge and a master's from Duke, he advises on Austin's Electric Utility Council and champions energy transition innovation. Thank you for joining us, Jonathan. And it is always nice to reconnect. Jonathan is sort of our resident expert on electrical energy. So glad you could join us, Jonathan. Maybe give everybody a little color of your background. When Jonathan and I first met, was it 2014?
14. Yeah.
2014.
Yeah.
And I was just getting this started with Charlene and trying to grapple with how do we figure this out and get this going. And Jonathan reached out coldly and we sat down for coffee. And after talking to him, I'm like, Jonathan, you need to replace me. And you need to run, Texas Pace Authority. Maybe give us a little color about yourself and give us a little color of maybe Texas Pace Authority and kind of what you've been doing the last couple of years.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I started my career as an engineer for Southern Company. It's a big electric utility in the Southeast. So yeah, I was always kind of a power sector energy guy. When I moved to Austin in 2014, Joe, that story you told, that sounds about right. From my memory, you're probably downplaying your role in that a little bit.
I think the one part of that I did say is, please come. I can't pay you, but you'd have all these rewards.
That's how all good startup stories go, right?
Right.
Yeah, I guess, when I had gotten involved Charlene had been working kind of the policy side, getting some legislation passed at the state. You had also had some history in the governor's office, and I think had helped out with that. So, we had the state legislation that enabled this financing tool, and then it was the job of rolling it out around the state. And, the challenge that we had, Joe, the reason we kind of created Texas Pace Authority was it required cities and counties to adopt this program that the state allowed. But, cities and counties didn't have the staff or the budget to do it themselves. So, Joe, Charlene, and I kind of came up with this idea. Well, we'll create this nonprofit and we'll run this program for cities and counties in Texas. That's how we got that started. First one was in Austin and Travis County. Joe, you remember it took us, probably 2 years before we finally closed the first project.
Bad memories.
It was a tough rollout phase, but essentially, Pace, we were funding mostly energy efficiency projects in commercial buildings. It started off pretty small, pretty niche back in the day, but now more than 10 years later, we've actually crossed the $500 million mark of Pace transactions in Texas, and they've slowly gotten bigger.
Really taken off.
Yeah, where the model now seems to be that it's really a good tool for funding energy efficiency in redevelopment projects and very large real estate projects. So
just so everyone understands, Pace Authority, really the idea was there's kind of three ways you could make more power plants, right? Or you could do lots of new clean energy type projects. So you can be solar, you can do wind, or you could look at how you use electricity now. And that's really what PACE was designed to do, is to say, look at how commercial buildings use energy now. And there are so many opportunities to do these small projects to basically, it's just the equivalent of building another power plant, just in finding little tiny savings. And so that's what was at the heart of PACE, was really working at a more efficiency way of doing clean energy, was just to make people more efficient.
Yeah. And what's kind of ironic is that, this was back in the day until very recently, electricity demand in this country has been flat. Right. So when I started at Southern Company in 2008, all up until, maybe a couple of years ago, electricity use in the country was flat. Right. So, at the time, Texas, people are moving to Texas. There's a lot of pressure on the energy and water system. That the cheapest way to meet that is by energy efficiency generally. So that's, the types of projects we were doing. And now that, electricity use is kind of starting to tick up, stuff like that becomes even more important.
And to be flat, it really shows homes were becoming more efficient. They were switching out different type bulbs because population was slowly growing. But I like this conversation to put it in tone, because the United States has 3 grids. One of them is starts and stops in Texas, with a small caveat that it gives a little bit of power over Mexico and a little bit of power to Oklahoma. But it really is its own grid here in Texas. So to know what's going on in Texas, you can get a flavor of what's going on to these other 2 monstrous grids that are in the U.S. So it gives a nice kind of balance to it. So as we were looking for more energies, you ended up then going, I know you continued to do PACE even when you went on some other stuff. Just to support it. But you went on to do a lot in clean energy in Texas as well, right?
Yeah, that's
Just
right.
a little flavor of Texas, the Texas scene, and kind of what electricity is. Because Texas is unique. As much as people like to badmouth it for being a conservative wacko state, Texas produces now, I think it's a majority. If not, it's just under a majority of its power is now wind and solar, right?
Wind, solar, and nuclear are just under 50%. So that's almost half clean energy for this year and so far, and last year as well. That's right. Yeah,
and cow farts. I mean, we have a lot of cattle, so it's.
I think Bill Gates came up with a new vaccine to stop the cows from farting. So I think he's going to solve that.
There we go. Yes. There we go. Now we got a cow conspiracy. It's going to make it in, Jonathan. So Ethan's just waiting
Jonathan,
for the right conspiracy.
I'm all on the
to
dark
pop in
side with you, bro, because I live in Australia, where we don't have a choice between clean energy or dirty energy. we want to use the dirty coal because we can't afford to do anything. We can't heat up our houses here, but we have to use clean energy. Like we have to. And our government keeps telling us that's what we want. When we keep telling our government, we just want the energy. Sorry, it's very expensive
fair
over
enough.
here.
Yes. Yeah. So the Texas grid, the way the market's designed is actually very close to how Australia's works. The two market designs are pretty similar. In Texas, I mean, I don't know much about Australian power prices, but in Texas, it's some of the lowest prices in the country. And that has been a big success story for a number of reasons. But, there's a lot of wind and solar, and, Texas kind of proves you can have low power prices and still have the renewables.
Apparently, we're having power shortage. The last 2 Christmases, we've had blackouts for like weeks and stuff. Like, there's just no power. And then especially in emergency.
Oh, wow.
All of our cities.
And they're on the other side of the equator, so their Christmas is summer.
Yeah.
So it's like here,
we have all of our cities are on the coast, so we have no inland cities. So all of our coasts are subject to tropical storms.
Hey, that's not very nice to say about Cooper
That's
Pedy.
not a city, bro.
There's like 3 people out there.
Yeah. It's a bus stop. Anyway, so when there is like just a little bit of a crisis in one of these cities, we've got no power in the whole country. Like, we're running short because we don't have any backup. We're all trying to build new clean energy, and we haven't done anything with we haven't even worked on the engineering side as much as you, I think. I mean, especially in the private sector, I don't know. They've tried incentives here to get everyone to fix their light bulbs. I think new houses have to build with LEDs and stuff like that. But there's a lot of power being wasted, and I guess it's clean though.
Well, that's really when Jonathan and I kicked this off. That was the market. Texas was faced with going through these running blackouts because our summer, really consumer demand is air conditioners. So between 2 and 6 in the afternoon, everybody's running their air conditioner. And so all of a sudden you have these power plants that have to run at peak, and they're trying to solve all this power. So really that was the idea, is if we can make places more efficient. But then, Jonathan, I'm trying to remember, but wasn't solar less than 1% almost a decade ago?
Solar was, even 5 years ago, it was basically non-existent.
Now there are new projects popping up continuously. Give us a flavor of what solar has gone through here in Texas, including wind. We even put in, wind has its own line coming in from West Texas Wind.
For sure. And that was, a Governor Perry initiative. Texas, because West Texas is very windy, there's a lot of wind resource out there. The problem is that people don't live out there, right? You got to get the power to the cities, Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, right? So this was, when Governor Perry was there, they called it the CREZ lines, competitive renewable energy zones. But basically, big transmission lines to bring in wind power from West Texas. Texas was a pioneer in wind power. Because we have a lot of wind. It's pretty cheap to build.
The windy
problem was
state.
getting it to the load centers, right? So that very windy. Yeah.
Don't mix us up with Chicago now, Ethan. That's the windy city.
That's
Yeah. So that was kind of the first evolution. Wind was there before solar. Solar started becoming economic, about the same time we were doing pay stuff, 2015 to 2020. All of a sudden, solar cost came down so rapidly and just so much that solar became basically the cheapest thing you could build and the fastest thing. In 2020, solar was basically non-existent on the Texas grid. It was a rounding error, and that it has consistently doubled since then. So far this year, solar has been about 13% of the Texas grid. A meaningful portion. And when you look at like what is actually being built in Texas, as far as power plants go, it's a lot more solar. So that percentage is going to go up, I think, fairly dramatically.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because you look at what Texas has done and how we use electricity has come down a lot. So we're more efficient, but we have, added to the grid, continuously adding more and more electrical. And as consumers, we've kind of found new ways. We have manufacturing facilities going more and more to electrical. So as they get more automated with robots and whatnot, they're using electricity. Now you can't help but either find an electric or a hybrid car throughout the place. So So we're finding newer ways now to consume, energy. But then in 2024, I think we're going to step into this conversation. So to give you a little flavor, 2024 had this little spike. They estimated between 5 and 7% of electricity in 2024 went to powering AI and these data centers. Facebook or Meta has announced they finally got a deal done. I think it's supposed to be done within the next 2 or 3 years, where they're going to be buying like 4 gigawatts of electricity. And so everybody is now looking, how do we power this? So this conversation that Ethan and I had popped into is really around productivity. So if population is going down, in 1975, I think it was, in 1975, there were 3.8 workers for every retiree. Right now, there's 2.7 workers for every retiree, and it's going to get to about 2.4 workers per retiree, which means we're missing more than one person, which equates to about 50 million people. So to maintain the same level of productivity, we either have to have about 50 million more workers, or we have to have a way to replace them. And so Ethan's argument.
Somewhat. AI and robots. I mean, AI, it's going to make mistakes, but so do we, right?
Well, then why do we need them if they're going to make mistakes?
Why do we need us?
But really the heart of it is, can AI do this? And that would mean there's a massive amount of electricity that's needed of data centers. It's sort of sad because after all this effort, in Texas, we were seeing these rolling blackouts. So it was more about either build new plants or find efficiencies. So we were basically trying to find efficiencies. But now after all that work, you see there might be a mismatch. And that is data centers need electricity 24/7. So they need it around the clock. Solar cannot produce electricity around the clock. It has a timing issue. Solar is great for consumer because we use our air conditioners during the day, so solar's getting its peak energy so long as it can stay cool. It's helping us, but now there's a little bit of a mismatch on green energy, and so I know Texas has a number of projects that are now looking at more natural gas. Georgia finally finished the U.S.'s only nuclear power plant in the last 30 years, and so
what's funny about that? When So Southern Company is Georgia Power's parent company. When I started there in 2008, I actually worked on some of that project. It had already been in development for a few years. Those units just came online a couple of years ago. So
right.
The
4 was just last year.
Exactly. I mean, those are a long lead term.
Yeah. Is that
almost 2
decade,
decades, almost 20 years.
That's the piece we're missing here. We're missing nuclear in Australia. That's the piece we're missing.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the U.S. is missing it.
Yeah, I know. It's been blacklisted, hasn't it? But it's what we need.
Yeah, that was a big drop of the ball. I think of the the 70s and 80s when they just stopped nuclear development.
3 Mile Island.
I feel like there was a whole propaganda campaign to make everyone absolutely terrified of it. And people just don't realize the radiation they're subjecting themselves at different times anyway,
Well, that's still going on. Germany shut down all theirs. So Taiwan just literally shut down their last one, which was more of a political movement. So it's still happening in the world all around where people are choosing not to use nuclear and more going after solar, but it's not going to fix kind of this mismatch in demand. So I did recently come across a company, Base. Are you familiar with Base out of Texas?
Oh, yeah. I know that well. Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
very interesting. Yeah, they have an interesting plan where they run batteries. So they'll take the tax credits for installing batteries in your home, and they try to run it on a sort of a hybrid model on your residential home, and then trying to then be able to sell power back. I know they're trying to get past the approvals or whatnot. So very interesting company that's working at it, because batteries are a potential, solution where solar could make it during the day, store it, and then you could use it, but you'd have to have a lot of solar to be able to make batteries work even on data centers. So, how do we deal with this mismatch with, data centers being ever so needed? Because they're estimating this AI drive will start to double every year. So in 2025, if it goes to 14% and then to 28% of electrical demand, I mean, with nuclear projects taking 20 years, solar projects going to be up fast, but they're a mismatch. I mean, we're really down to natural gas, which natural gas is 3 to 4 years to get a plant up. So there's a mismatch in timing to get this going.
Yeah. And that's the topic to me is it's one of the most important ones out there today. Like, I mean, it is my belief that the industries of the future are going to be built on electricity. And the countries that succeed in that are going to be the countries that can build the most electric generating capacity possible, right? And, for the US, it's a competition with China, and AI kind of underpins that, right? And this is a paradigm shift for, the electric sector where for 20 years, it's been flat load growth. And now we're looking at everywhere in the country, load projections going through the roof, what you just mentioned. And we don't have the capacity to keep up with that. So we've got to build it, right? And we've got to be able to figure out how to build it. So it's the question of the day. And I would say, there's really two angles that I think I'd like to talk about it from. One, there's the load side, the data centers themselves. Can you look at, how can you operate those to get more juice out of the grid, as it were? And then on the generation side, how can we use our existing generation fleet to
let's call that the Homer Simpson model.
Flipping the nuclear switch?
Yeah, that'll be the Homer Simpson. Well, let's go through that, because if we are going to bring AI to the table, AI could help a lot. One of it is a power plant. As it goes online, a power plant has its most, I wouldn't say it's efficient, but when it's at its peak is what it could do. So electricity, for the most part in this country, we don't store it in a battery. It's use it or lose it. So really, these power plants have to be built to meet our peak demand. So this is when it's 105 outside, 95% humidity, and everybody wants to run their air conditioner, which I just described what it is in Austin like right now. So everybody's running their air conditioner, right? So that's our peak demand. Everybody is running at full capacity. But then there are times at night, all of a sudden, some of these power plants are running at maybe 5, 10% as low. And so all of a sudden, maybe there's a way AI could step in here for its own purpose and balance some of this and bring us on new technologies. Is that what you mean as far as being able to balance some of this load?
Well, it kind of goes to, what you just said is exactly right. We build the grid for the peaks, not for like the average use. And the thing about it is it's the same as with highways. We build highways for rush hour traffic, right? You build the grid for peak, those a couple hours in the summer afternoons. And we assume that with the entire year is going to have to be built around those, few handful of hours. But the reality is that we have a grid that is built for those peaks, but most of the time, the vast majority of the time, it's being underutilized, right? So those peaks that you're talking about, that's just a handful of hours in a year. It's like less than 100 hours.
Because really it's summer and winter. In the winter, you're not doing as much electrical and maybe more of a natural gas. You're heating the furnace. So it's really the summertime when you're peaking out electrical.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Christmas time for Ethan. That's
like 2 tiers of power, right? Like maybe AI consumption and just wasted electricity should be like paid, like there should be a premium, and then like there should be like what is it called? Critical power. Critical power is cheaper. And then so these power centers, they would have to pay, or they would have to use stored power instead of incoming power, right? So you could call incoming power critical power, and you could have stored power non-critical, and you could have stipulations that these data centers could only use non-critical energy or something like that.
Before you answer, Jonathan, I know you got some, but Ethan brings up a good point, and that is, if you're really going to grow and expand something, right, it's a component of price. And so if we were to have, if electricity was free, all of a sudden desalination would be really easy. We would have zero water problems, and we just desalination because, electricity would be nothing. But even though our consumption has somewhat flattened in the US until 2024, the price has not gone down. So as a commodity, it has constantly increased in price, which means we do have this problem. And so with that, I want to leave it because it's going to be a component of price no matter how we look at this, core.
For sure. So, I guess where I was going with that is that when you look at the same way that the grid is only a handful of hours a year that it is actually at that peak, data centers, there is a kind of this narrative out there that they need to run, 24/7, 365 days a year at full capacity. But the reality is they don't actually behave that way. There's really only a handful of years where they're running at their peak allowed capacity. And so what you're seeing around the country in different markets, and everybody's approaching it slightly different, is, okay, well, what if instead of saying, you want 100 megawatts and you want that all the time, data center, if you're willing to be just a little bit flexible, just a handful of hours a year, and, the study I sent was like 0.25% of the hours of year. That's like 25 hours a year. If you're willing to have that flexibility for just a handful of hours, we will bring you online a lot faster. You can get grid connected. And from the utilities perspective, we don't have to worry about managing around those peaks on, super hot summer days when a nuclear plant or a coal plant has tripped offline, and all of a sudden we have this emergency because we have this flexibility. So what you're seeing a lot.
So this really means when it's really hot and nice, do not say please and thank you to ChatGPT.
Your image allowance is reduced.
You can write it. You can write it like a Christmas card. Yeah, you can write a Christmas card at Christmas time.
100%.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And the data center operators, like, they realize this, and I think that they're starting to work with utilities. It's honestly, it's an economic argument. If you want to go through the full interconnection queue and anywhere else except Texas, it's going to take you 5 to 7 years. You want your data center on now, are you going to wait 5 to 7 years to go through that interconnection queue? If you're willing to be a little bit flexible, utilities can possibly bring you on quicker. So it's kind of that trade-off,
Where do you think these plants will ultimately manage some of that? Do you think it'll be locally? Because some of it could be managed locally. The grid isn't so easy to be distributed. Another thing our country has as far as infrastructure is a lot of the transformers and electrical steel are made by one company. So if you want a lot of it, there's a queue for it. So we have limited infrastructure and building, but at the same time, so that would lean, okay, well, we have all of our grids combined are only 100 years old. So there's probably 40-year-old technology out there all over the country. But would it be more central, or would it maintain? Because right now we have a centrally located. So we have these power plants that produce a tremendous amount of power, and then they will send it out and reduce it basically as it gets to our house. But do you think for data centers, it will start to be a component of just bringing on large power units, or will they do it more local? For example, will they have gas run generators that are doing it in part on time? Will they mix that with a large solar system that does something with battery units? And that would include our own consuming households. Does it mean we're now going to do the same thing and bring on battery packs? So then I turn off my power at the hot time of the day because now I'm using the battery charger that charged at night. Do you think that's what's going to happen to these data centers, or do you think it'll just be large scale projects still just kind of centrally distributed?
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's a short term versus the long term. In the short term, even if you wanted to build a gas plant, you talked about transformers, but really the problem for gas plants is turbines. If you do not have a turbine under contract right now, you cannot get one before 2030. That is the reality. That's the reality. So, unless your gas plant is basically under construction, you're not building a new gas.
And what we're talking about the steam generated turbine.
Well, there's kind of two types: combustion turbines, which it's like a big hair dryer, burns gas, the hot air turns a turbine, and then combined cycles will actually put a steam turbine on the back end where they boil water. So that's a little more efficient. But you can't get those before 2030. So we're kind of on the gas side.
Wow.
We're largely we have to make do with what we have right now until, some supply chain stuff gets figured out, right? And I think the way you do that is it's flexibility, right? And so, pairing your gas turbine with either, maybe a battery, maybe some demand response or some load flexibility, and using those assets that have already been built or that are in process of being built, using them more efficiently. You just want to use them more, right?
I talked to this guy this weekend, and he was telling me their company's in North Austin. It's a startup up there, and what they're working on is heat distribution for these data centers. And so I was pretty shocked to find out how much electricity they use. I'm like, wait a minute. So you got to use a bunch of electricity, you heat it up, and then you got to use more electricity to cool it down. So they too are trying to figure out ways, how can they run coolant and be able to move it around and do stuff and try to find inventive ways to use less electricity, but they also have a
Did I
huge
read
demand.
that the data centers are also causing Texas to have to implement waters restrictions as well?
Water is a problem in Texas for a number of reasons, and yeah, some of those. That's going to
I
be.
hear that they
I think that kind of flies under the radar. You don't see it a lot.
Yeah, they consume massive amounts of water, not just energy, in keeping the systems cool. And apparently,
Cool. Yeah, but they're trying to get rid of water, one, because they can't get it, and two, it corrodes all the electronics. That's why they're starting to lean towards cooling, because the coolant will burst and it doesn't corrode any of the chips, so their servers are still fine. But yeah, we don't have enough water. It's expensive. I mean, water's super expensive.
water is more like a resource that you can only kind of claim while it's here, right? Whereas energy, we can steal it from the sun. So energy seems to be it's not gonna unlimited. It seems you just need to make more things to create energy, whereas you can't make more things to make more water.
But how do we do that? I mean, if we do have this unlimited supply of solar, how do we balance this demand during, even the non-peak times of maintaining enough electricity to power this ongoing demand for basically compute power?
Yeah. Texas has been, just the past couple of years, a great case study of this. When you look at 2023 versus last year and this year, 2023 prices were very high. And there was also very little energy storage, so very little battery. When I say energy storage, I mean batteries, right? Very little. By 2024, Texas had brought on almost 10 gigawatts of batteries. That's quite a lot. And 2024 prices last year had cratered, and it largely can be attributed to the effect of batteries. What happened was peak demand in Texas tends to be in that 4 to 6 p.m. period in the summer. People are getting home, they're turning on their ACs. That's when power demand spikes. In Texas, the good thing about that is that's also the time when solar is producing, right? So solar and Texas's peak matches up very well. And what has happened is that we brought so much solar online in Texas that the peak in terms of prices has actually shifted to later in the evening when the sun is going down. All of a sudden, you don't have that solar power and prices spiked, right? So
now at night, that's funny. So during the day is a cheaper price, and now during at night is the lower price.
Well, in the evening, kind of that
Gotcha.
6, 7 to 10 p.m. period. But batteries are perfect for
that's
that.
That's when Ethan just loves to sit out and have the fan.
I'll open the window and have the air conditioner on at that point. Yeah.
Grab a beer.
Share my aircon with the world.
I guess that could work. Why not? But what batteries have done in Texas the last couple of years, it's basically shifted that. When you can look at almost every day in Texas now, you can see the sun goes down and batteries kick on and ramp up for that evening peak.
Now, are these large commercial power? Are these large commercial battery projects, or are most of these just consumer led?
No, these are utility scale. So we're not talking about batteries in your phone. These are like shipping containers sized. They actually looks very similar to like a server farm. It's just racks of batteries. Texas brought on, I think I said 10 gigawatts last year. I mean, for reference, the peak Texas grid is 85 gigawatts, right? So that's a substantial amount of energy storage that came online in a very short period of time. Texas is very good if you want to build stuff quickly. It's the place to be.
Yeah, in Australia, I'll just say in Australia, everyone's got the solar panels now because I'm sure like you guys probably had some government grants or something to help you put solars on your roof. But no one's got the batteries yet. So it seems like we're all doing the same thing here too, where we're getting all this power, anything we don't use, and then we have to pay the grid at nighttime to use stuff. So I think the batteries will become more commercial in residential houses. Once everyone's trying to come up with new batteries now. So I'm sure it won't be long, and we'll start seeing that rebates for batteries in your house.
Well, that's a good point. It's really about geography too, right? In Oregon, there's lots of hydropower. They have a lot of water. In Texas, we have, the whole West Texas is just windy. I think that's the reason Texas just keeps getting wider and wider. It's just blowing over there. And then we're on the Sun Belt. So solar and wind just makes sense for Texas. And there's nobody in Georgia, so it makes sense for nukes. But really, you look at the distribution and, there's not always these alternative power sources where the need is necessarily. And so, for instance, there's only 4 million people in Oregon, but it produces a lot of power. Oregon's a net positive producer. And so they ship power out. So finding different places makes it also difficult because by the time you put it on, you've got to move it around. And so this would make batteries a nice solution for doing this. What do you think I have noticed wind has a problem. When it's blowing too much, they basically have to shut the generator down and tie the blades down. So you're getting too much of it. So wind has always had this kind of problem just with management, but it produces a ton of power. Where solar is light maintenance, I got in early, so I paid 20 times what it is now to put solar on my house.
Thank you. You're a pioneer, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then also I got the earliest technology, which I have an inverter for the entire system instead of microinverters for every single panel. So mine's not very efficient. So I have all the best stuff for all the highest price, but I haven't gotten into batteries. I know I looked into batteries and was kind of the useful life of a battery was about 7 years, and degradation happens pretty fast. And I did see, the company slips my mind now, but they are buying old car batteries and they're turning them in. They basically put them all together in almost a shipping container and create one massive battery. Really, that batteries could be an answer to lots of solutions. However, we're still working on 7-year to life batteries. How positive or negative do you think that'll be for AI as we go forward?
Yeah, well, the technology it's changed very rapidly. Most batteries, at least utility scale, are financeable for at least 20 years, right? And so they will degrade a bit over time, but at least 85 to 90% of their capacity should still be available after 20 years. That's that's just the reality of the technology has gotten much better very recently, and it continues to go down in cost as well. Where batteries are really good is in short duration. So like 2 to 4 hours, that tends to be the sweet spot for, lithium ion type battery technologies. And that's great for kind of your daily, they call it energy arbitrage. You charge it when it's cheap and you discharge it when it's expensive. Where batteries haven't solved, or aren't a great solution is for when you need like longer durations. So, more than 8 hours, like in Texas, if we get, a couple of weeks where the wind just isn't blowing, like your batteries just aren't going to be great for durations like that. Right. So there is a kind of this missing part in technologies in the grid of long duration storage that there's, a bunch of folks out there that have kind of ideas yet, but that is one part that just hasn't quite been solved yet. What do you do when you need, more than 4, 6 or 8 hours of energy storage?
So really, batteries can continuously charge and hold a charge just to smooth over things before we end up running against our limitations in production. I know we've talked about some ways of being more efficient, let's say all these data centers that are starting to come on, everybody's wanting to build them to really power this compute power. And so to offset productivity, I've just done some back of the napkin math here, but to offset productivity by 50 million people, based on what we are, we'll run out of peak power by almost 2030. I got real conservative. It goes out way faster than that if you follow the projections of what AI demand will be. I'm like, okay, if it's doubling every year, it's just going to be insane. But that means by 2030, if we are very efficient in using everything. And one thing I didn't take into account, because you just barely sent that article, Jonathan, that was how efficient a data center could be. And I hadn't heard that before. I'd been under the same false perspective that a data center runs constant at a high demand. So that would maybe add a little buffer, but we're looking at 5 to 7 years of running out of basically electricity to continuously fund those. So what are some new projects that are, and by the way, that adds no new electricity. So no new electricity. So what are some projects out there that are going on right now to innovatively bring on new electricity?
Yeah. The biggest problem that I think the grid has right now is that it just takes so long to get through. We call it the interconnection queue, but it's basically going through the study process. Is basically going through the study process to get permission to put your power plant on the grid, right? ERCOT, which is Texas. I'm a huge ERCOT homer, big fan, and I think the results speak for themselves. And you can get through the ERCOT queue in probably 3 years. And when I tell people that, they're like, that seems like so long. But when you look at like basically any other place in the country, California, the Northeast, the Southeast, anywhere, it's more like a 7 to 10 year process, right?
And I've heard of projects being near complete and still not being able to, get turned on and, producing anything.
For sure. And that, maybe that wasn't that big a deal when electricity demand wasn't going up, but it is a big deal now. And the good thing is the grid operators are aware of it. And they are, moving at regulatory pace at kind of updating their rules. But I think a lot of folks are looking at ERCOT in Texas and what, the success that Texas has had there as kind of a model. Texas, the queue right now in Texas, there are 440 gigawatts of projects in the queue. That's on a grid whose peak is 85. Now, the vast majority of those projects will not get built. It takes years of development and, the financial business case has to be there. But having that much as your kind of starting point, it makes it a lot easier to hit, those kind of, demand projections that we're looking at.
And I did read about 100 of those right now are natural gas. Some of them are actually slated to be done. There's the peaker one here for LCRA, and then Legend is one that's coming on. But a lot of, whether they get built or not, you're right, we don't know. But I did see a lot of them are natural gas. So there's kind of this hybrid approach.
Yeah, I actually just pulled those numbers yesterday. So the ERCOT queue as of right now, I mentioned 440 gigawatts. Most of that's actually solar and storage. So let's see. 162 of that is solar. 180 of that is battery storage. Gas is, 35 gigawatts of gas in the queue, which is still, that's still a lot, right?
Yeah, well, because you could travel through time with 1.21 gigawatts, so that's heaps.
So long as your car can get up to 88 miles an hour.
Well, that's gigawatt.
They don't have those in the sky.
Oh, what's a gigawatt? I thought it was just the way the Americans say it. So that's even bigger.
I think that's how Christopher Lloyd said it.
Okay.
What makes Texas so unique is ERCOT, and I don't know how many know this, but there are the co-ops. So there are, I think, 100 and something co-ops still. Like I know we have in Austin, so it's Austin Power. So there's still a couple of co-ops, but most of the state is what is considered a deregulated market. And so there's lots of producers. So if you are here, I only have City of Austin. That's all I can pick if it's municipal owned. But I believe San Antonio, I can pick from a number of electrical providers and all varying prices and all varying solutions. And so it does make Texas very unique because it's an incubation system that the world can look at for some arcane, because most of it is pretty thick with regulation. So even though there's regulation, what makes Texas so easy to kind of take on and do a new project, to do something innovative, to do something new?
Yeah. Why is that interconnection queue so much quicker here? Yeah. I look, I'm not going to get too wonky with you, but the phrase is called connect and manage. ERCOT has this philosophy that nobody else in the country has. They basically say that we will, if you want to build a power plant, we will let you connect to the grid. You'll have to go through the studies and prove that, it's not going to, cause a safety issue or a grid stability issue, but they will let you connect. And the risk is on you that if you pick the bad location, in Texas, you only get paid for the energy that you actually produce and put on the grid. It's an energy only market. And the risk is on the private sector, whoever decides to build that plant, that if the money isn't there to support your plant, you're just out of luck, right? That's on you. That was a risk that you and your investors chose to take.
And really what you're saying is they're going to build a power plant, but they become a price taker on spot price, right? So ERCOT says, hey, I need this power from you to service here. I'll buy your power. But other than that, they have no other way to have the power. So it's their entire risk is to say, okay, I think there will be enough electricity coming through here. We're going to gamble that ERCOT will say, yes, buy our power to add to the grid at this point, or proximity location. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. They run it. It's called a marginal dispatch. So you, as a power plant operator, you say, this is what I'm willing to sell power at. And you do this basically every 5 minutes. You set this is what I'm willing to sell my power at. For solar and wind, that's going to be very low because you don't have any fuel costs. For natural gas, it's a little bit higher. For coal can be very high. But basically ERCOT says these are the units that are bidding into the market. This is how much we need. And this, at this 5-minute interval, and they just stack them up from low cost to whenever they hit enough to meet the grid demand. They do that every 5 minutes. So it is, and it's a very...
I'm going back 10 years, but I remember when all the natural gas plants were so angry that wind was getting priority. And so they're like...
Well, it gets priority because it's cheap. When I said ERCOT is like Australia, that's the key feature, I think, that is very similar to Australia. Australia operates in a very similar principle, an energy-only market. In other regions, they typically will have like capacity payments, or is a very common term, where the generator gets paid whether it runs or not. You're getting a capacity payment based on your ability to turn on, whether you actually do or not. Texas doesn't do that. It's energy only.
Yeah, one thing we haven't talked about is fusion. And I have followed a couple of fusion projects. There's the big $50 billion one going on in Europe underground. And then there's a couple of startups attempting on it. I know Jeff Bezos has his pet one and Bill Gates has his one. Musk has ultimately said fusion is not viable.
He's going straight for 0 point.
What do you think? Yeah. It's gone for the other end of the equation for consumption instead. So anything you hear out there in regards to fusion and its ability to maybe offset this? Because if we've solved fusion, we essentially don't need batteries anymore. It takes care of a lot of infrastructure, but right now, batteries are our next dependable hope that they will be able to do much, because they'll be able to allow us to use capacity and then use it at all the various times that we need to really run this compute power, unless we have some kind of solution for basically figuring out how to bring down the price of electricity. And that's only going to come if we figure out fusion.
Yeah. Fusion is the final boss in the electricity sector. If we figure that out, we figured out everything, right? I hope that somebody's successful in that. I did see that, the biggest player in this space is an MIT spin out, Commonwealth Fusion Systems. They have signed a PPA and have said that they're going to be able to deliver a commercial fusion power plant by the early 2030s. I mean, if that's true, then, you could almost build a new fusion plant before you could build a new gas plant. If it's accurate, because you couldn't get a gas turbine in that time frame. Right.
Right.
I don't know.
I know all
hope
their
they are successful.
experiments, they're like their net production is like, 30 seconds. And some of them even say we had net, a net positive production. And then they come back, well, it wasn't exactly. We thought it was, but it wasn't. So I have followed some of those. But speaking of, the projects that are going on, you see China doing some mega projects. They have this one where they're basically cutting through a mountain to produce this tunnel. It's going to be something like $7 to $8 billion projects. You see the big one that came on in the UAE.
The line.
The U.S., we don't really do any mega projects. Do you think that is something the U.S. is going to have to take on to say, all right, we're going to have to do a one big mega project, this, maybe a $10 billion, monstrous nuclear facility or something like that? Do you think that is something, the U.S. needs to do to find this? Or do you think right now the market is, moving fast along that's going to help meet all those? Let's even take Texas, for example, as a microsystem. Do you think Texas will be able to produce enough power on what it's doing right now?
I think of any place in the country, Texas is the one that is best positioned to meet, future load growth demands. And I think, the trend is actually the opposite of bigger and centrally located power plants. It's tending to get more distributed. You hear the term like virtual power plant thrown out a lot. Texas has a pilot program in that, but it's essentially where you can aggregate.
You're getting Ethan excited. All this off the grid. He's like, oh yes.
Well,
Ethan's going to have to go down in his bunker.
Well, nobody, it's still kind of an evolving, very rapidly evolving, conversation and the technologies too. But essentially, you aggregate a bunch of batteries or solar panels or even, gas generators at people's houses and businesses, and combined, you can operate them like a power plant. That's actually exactly what Base Power does. You mentioned them.
Right.
Their business model is you'd sign up with them as your utility, as your retail electric provider. They give you a battery, put it in your house, and what they will do is in the hot summer afternoons when prices have spiked, they will dispatch all of their batteries at once, and that's less very expensive power that they have to buy from the grid. So Tesla's doing that. There's, that's essentially the basic concept behind those virtual power plants.
It's a fascinating model when I heard about it. I do remember, this was like 10 years ago, where you could sign up with the city of Austin, and if you agreed, your Tesla or your plug-in car, they would pull from it to add to the grid. So you could sign up for this similar thing where they might use your car's battery to kind of operate the grid.
Is that like
there's been quite a few things.
Like
and they do have the one
organ donor on your license or something?
Yeah, exactly.
At least it's good.
If you get in a car accident, that's the first thing they do. They drain the battery.
And by itself. Smart.
Yeah. But they also have it with thermostats. So you could sign up and they'd have remote thermostats to kind of wing you off of peak. So then all of a sudden, now in Japan, it's interesting. Japan has a minimum legal temperature for work environments. So I don't know if you've ever worked in Japan, but if you go there in the summer, it's like 82. I mean, they're on Celsius. So I don't know how it computes in Celsius, but it's like 82 degrees. It's so hot, and all of them wear suits. It's like very hot, and that's the minimum of their building. So in the summer, it's very hot in Japan. It's not a comfortable temperature. In the U.S., we are wild, which here it's too cold. Like I always joke, the hot summer is when I usually get sick because I'm in air conditioning that somebody keeps it
I
like
lived in
50,
Arizona for 10 years.
So it's always freezing
I lived
cold.
in Arizona for 10 years, bro. And the only time I have to wear a snow jacket at work is in the summer. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. That's when you have your heaters in the summer. See, we crank our electricity. So it is one. I mean, how do you think we'll get down to basically doing more micro systems? I'm still doing some building in Oregon, and we've even tried to play with like, okay, can we get solar in here? Can we do this? And right now, the city doesn't change their demand. They're like, you have to get your transformer paid, get the pole, run everything off load as if it was. They don't really add any solar into the calculations at all when they really do a development. I've done everything I can in my house to be more efficient. I don't have the batteries yet. It's like almost $40,000 to put in a battery system, not counting base. They actually have a nice program. But I looked at doing Tesla roof. To get my roof done with Tesla shingles, it's like $170,000. I was like, what? And it took me a long time to finally get a price from them. So I don't know if we have any new inventions or technologies that really could wing us off of electricity and actually be off the grid without literally building an entire solar and battery farm.
Yeah. So one of the things we haven't talked about that I am very bullish on is geothermal. That's a technology that has existed for many decades, but especially with the advancement of drilling technologies, mostly because of shale gas in the U.S., that industry has gotten very good at drilling very deep and relatively cheaply. And if I had to put a bet on what do I think is going to be the next big winner in the electricity space, that it would actually be geothermal. I think that it's kind of flying under the radar right now, but there have been companies just in the last few months that have announced commercial PPAs and projects that are actually coming online very quickly at basically competitive prices that it would be expensive for the average electricity user, but for a data center, definitely in their sweet spot. Geothermal is limited. The biggest drawback is it's limited by geography. You need to be able to find hot rock at not too deep, but especially for the West. And I think even in Texas, I think you're going to see a lot of those projects start to get traction.
Well, Jonathan, leave us with some words of where you think electrical power is. You've already told us geothermal is the place to go. Where do you see the grid, and how positive are you as far as whether or not we can wing ourselves out of the working man as populations decline? I say that also giving it the preface that you're bailing and going to Guam.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I'm an optimist. I want to, believe that we're capable of meeting this moment. I think it's the best economic opportunity. The energy transition is the biggest economic opportunity that we'll have in our generation. And the good news is I think we largely have the technologies already there that can meet all of that. The problem is largely at this point a policy issue and a market design issue. We need to put in place rules and market structures that incentivize these technologies to come online faster and can really kind of realize their true economic value, right? So and folks are aware of this. The grids, not just ERCOT, are very trying to figure out this issue very quickly, and coming up with different kind of schemes and market designs that can meet this challenge. But when it comes down to it, we need all the electrons we can get, and any policy that it's limiting our ability to build power generation, whether it's renewables or gas or whatever, is it's ultimately it's not doing us the service of the country, because China is building. They're building very quickly, and they're building a lot of everything, right? And we're going to have to keep up.
You heard it here, folks. Hostile Dysfunction, where we impact the wild, interconnected chaos shaping our world, including the population's decline and all the reasons for it. Our guest, Jonathan Blackburn, thank you so much for being with us today. And, to cover this topic, I think we've now know for sure Ethan will start investing in the bunker. I think you've convinced him now that that's the way to go.
Just keep your
We've already
window
told
closed
that
when you
we're
got the AC on, though. Well, just keep.
I
Okay.
like
Well,
it.
there
All
we
right.
go.
Thanks,